Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the New Horizon, watching the stars drift past the windows. He was tired but happy. Today they were bringing medicine and food to people who needed it badly. That was what humans did best. In the galaxy, they helped others. "Captain, we're getting close to the refugee camp," said Lisa Grant from the pilot's seat. She was young but skilled, one of the best pilots Jake had ever worked with. Her hands moved smoothly over the controls as she guided their large cargo ship through space. "Good work, Lisa. How are our supplies looking?" Jake asked. Carlos Webb looked up from his engineering station. "All cargo is secure, Captain. We have enough medical supplies for 3,000 people, plus food packets for 2 weeks." Carlos always knew exactly what they were carrying. He treated every delivery like it was the most important thing in the universe. Amy Foster walked onto the bridge carrying her medical scanner. "I've been checking the refugee health reports. They have an outbreak of Kepler flu, but nothing we can't handle with the vaccines we brought." Jake nodded. This was normal work for humans in the galaxy. For over 200 years, humans had been the builders and helpers. When planets needed new cities, they called humans. When different alien species had problems with each other, they asked humans to help solve them. When disasters struck, human ships were always the first to arrive with aid. The galaxy was huge, with 12 major star systems and hundreds of different alien species. The reptile-like Zethkari were fierce warriors who controlled the eastern sectors. The crystal beings called Veltar were incredibly smart and ran most of the galaxy's technology. The gaseous Mordon lived in the outer rim and were excellent traders. But humans were known for something else entirely. They were the peaceful ones, the builders, the problem solvers. Most aliens thought humans were useful but weak. They saw human ships and thought of construction crews, not fighters. Jake was fine with that reputation. He had been carrying supplies to refugee camps for 15 years. Before that, he helped build the great space stations around Jupiter. His father had been a diplomat who helped prevent 3 different wars between alien species. Peace was good for business. Good for everyone? "Captain, we're getting a message from Admiral Sam Hughes at Luna Station," Lisa called out. Jake pressed a button on his chair. "Put him through." Admiral Hughes appeared on the main screen. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. Like most humans in the defense fleet, he spent his time helping with rescues and keeping trade routes safe. The human military hadn't fought a real war in over a century. "Jake, how's the supply run going?" Hughes asked. "Smooth as always, Admiral. We should have the refugees taken care of by tomorrow." "That's good to hear. Listen, I'm calling all our cargo captains. We're getting some strange readings from the deep space monitors. Probably nothing, but I want everyone to be extra careful for the next few weeks." Jake frowned. "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures we don't recognize. They're coming from the galactic rim, way out past the last colonies. Could be natural phenomena. Could be some new technology we haven't seen before. Do you think it's dangerous?" Hughes shook his head. "Probably not. The rim is empty space. Nothing out there but old dead stars and empty planets. But you know how it is. Better safe than sorry." After the call ended, Jake looked at his crew. They all seemed calm. Strange readings from empty space were not unusual. The galaxy was full of weird energy fields and natural events that scientists were still trying to understand. "Carlos, make sure our shields are working properly," Jake said. "And Lisa, plot us a course back to Earth after we finish here. I want to take a few days off." "Will do, Captain," they both replied. Jake walked to the large window at the front of the bridge. Out there in the darkness, millions of alien beings lived their lives in peace because humans helped keep the galaxy stable. The Zethkari might have bigger guns, and the Veltar might have better computers. But humans had something else. They cared about others. The New Horizon was not a warship. It had basic shields and a few small weapons for protection against pirates, but it was built to carry cargo, not fight battles. Most human ships were like this. They were designed to build things, fix things, and help people dot in the cargo bay below. Thousands of medical kits waited to save lives. Food packages would feed hungry families. Construction materials would help rebuild homes destroyed by storms. This was what humans did in the galaxy. This was what they were known for. Jake had heard stories from his grandfather about the old days on Earth, when humans fought terrible wars against each other. But those days were long gone. Humans had learned to be better. They had joined the galactic community as builders and peacemakers, and everyone was happier for it. As the New Horizon approached the refugee camp, Jake could see the temporary shelters spread across the planet's surface. Thousands of beings from different species had fled here after their homes were destroyed by natural disasters. They would stay here until new homes could be built for them. Beginning landing sequence, Lisa announced. Jake smiled. In a few hours, they would start unloading supplies. Sick people would get medicine. Hungry families would get food. Children would get toys and games to help them forget their troubles for a while. This was the work that made Jake proud to be human. This was what humans were meant to do in the galaxy. He had no idea that everything was about to change. 3 weeks later, Jake Morrison was drinking coffee on his ship when the emergency signal came through. The sound was harsh and loud, cutting through the quiet morning like a knife. Jake had never heard anything like it before. "Captain, Lisa," shouted from the pilot station. "We're getting a galaxy-wide emergency broadcast." Jake ran to the bridge. On the main screen, Admiral Hughes appeared, but he looked different. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking slightly. "All ships, all stations, all colonies," Hughes began. "The Zethkari Third Fleet has been destroyed. Repeat, the Third Fleet is gone. We lost contact with them 6 hours ago, near the Vega system." Jake felt cold. The Zethkari Third Fleet was one of the strongest military forces in the galaxy. They had over 50 warships, each one armed with weapons that could destroy a small moon. How could they just be gone? "Admiral, what destroyed them?" Someone asked over the radio. "We don't know. The last message we received was difficult to understand. They said something was eating their ships." "Eating their ships?" Jake looked at his crew. Amy had gone very quiet. Carlos was checking their weapon systems, even though the New Horizon only had small guns meant for pirates. Over the next few days, more reports came in. The Veltar crystal ships near Alpha Centauri had stopped responding. 3 colonies in the Outer Rim had gone silent. Every time rescue ships went to investigate, they found nothing but empty space where cities and fleets used to be. Then Dr. Kate Phillips made a discovery that changed everything. Kate was digging through old ruins on a planet called Kepler 442b. She was looking for artifacts from ancient civilizations when she found something that made her blood freeze. Deep underground, in a chamber that was thousands of years old, she found stone tablets covered in writing. The writing was in a language so old that her computers could barely translate it. But what they said was terrifying. "The Devourers have returned," Kate whispered as she read the translation. "The metal beings who eat worlds and drink the life from stars." According to the tablets, the Devourers had appeared in the galaxy 3,000 years ago. They came in massive ships that looked like dark metal insects. These ships would land on planets and consume everything: people, animals, plants, even the rocks and metal. They turned everything into fuel for their machines. The ancient civilizations had fought them with everything they had. Entire species had thrown their armies at the Devourers. It made no difference. The enemy was too strong, too smart, too hungry. But then something had stopped them. The tablets mentioned the sleeping war gods, beings who came from a small blue world and fought with weapons that could tear holes in space itself. These war gods had hunted the Devourers across the galaxy until not a single enemy ship remained. Kate stared at the description of these war gods. They sounded exactly like humans, but that was impossible. Humans were peaceful. They built things. They didn't destroy them. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison was about to see the enemy with his own eyes. The New Horizon was carrying supplies to the Altair colonies when they dropped out of hyperspace and found hell waiting for them. "Captain," Lisa said in a tiny voice, "you need to see this." On the main screen was something that should not exist. A ship the size of a city floated above Altair Prime. It was black metal covered in spikes and tubes. Parts of it were moving, like it was alive. Smaller ships swarmed around it, like insects dot below them. The planet was dying. Great machines were sucking up the oceans. The cities were being torn apart and fed into massive processors. Jake could see people running, trying to escape, but there was nowhere to go. "What is that thing?" Amy whispered. "It's a devourer hive." "Ship," Jake said, though he didn't know how he knew that name. Something deep in his mind recognized the enemy, like a memory from a dream. "Captain, they've seen us," Carlos reported. "3 smaller ships are coming this way. Get us out of here." Lisa, full power to the engines. The New Horizon turned and ran, but not before Jake saw something that would haunt his dreams forever. The enemy ships were using some kind of beam to pull apart a passenger liner. The ship cracked open like an egg, and thousands of people spilled out into space. But instead of dying, they were being collected by the Devourer ships. They were being turned into food dot as they escaped into hyperspace. Jake looked at his crew. They were all thinking the same thing. The galaxy was facing something that could not be reasoned with, could not be stopped, could not be bargained with. The Devourers wanted to consume everything, and they had the power to do it. Reports kept coming in from across the galaxy. The Mordan trading fleet had been caught near Jupiter gone. The Veltar science stations around Saturn empty. Colony after colony fell silent. The Galactic Federation Council met in emergency session. Representatives from every major species gathered to discuss what could be done. The Shothkori wanted to attack with everything they had. The Veltar thought they could build better shields. The Mordan suggested running to another galaxy entirely, but Admiral Hughes had a different idea, one that scared him more than the Devourers themselves. "We need to activate Protocol Omega," he told the Council quietly. Most of the alien representatives had never heard of Protocol Omega. It was a human military secret locked away in the deepest vaults of Luna Station. Even Hughes had never seen the actual files. "What is Protocol Omega?" asked the Zethkari General. Hughes took a deep breath. "It's instructions. From before we joined the galactic community, from when humans were different." The council chamber fell silent. Everyone knew that humans had a violent past on their home world, but those days were long gone. Humans had evolved beyond war. They were builders now, not fighters. "Admiral Hughes," said the Veltar representative, "surely you don't believe ancient human weapons could stop an enemy that destroyed our best fleets?" Hughes looked out the window at Earth, spinning peacefully in the distance. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But Dr. Phillips' discoveries suggest that humans fought these things before, and won." That night, Hughes stood alone in his office, holding the key to Protocol Omega. Once he opened those files, there would be no going back. Humanity would learn what they used to be, what they might have to become again. Outside his window, Earth looked so peaceful. Children were playing in parks. People were building new cities. Artists were creating beautiful works of art. It was everything humanity had worked for over the past 2 centuries. But out in the darkness, the devourers were coming. And soon, Hughes would have to make a choice that would change humanity forever. Inserted the key and turned it. Deep in the vaults below, ancient computers began to wake up. Files that had been sealed for centuries started to unlock. And somewhere in the darkness of space, something that had been sleeping for a very long time began to stir. Admiral Sam Hughes stared at the files spread across his desk. His hands were shaking as he read page after page of documents that changed everything he thought he knew about humanity. Protocol Omega was not just a military plan. It was a complete guide to war written by people who understood killing better than anyone in the galaxy. The files contained blueprints for weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Battle plans that treated planets like chess pieces. Strategies so brutal that Hughes felt sick reading them. Admiral? General Beth Carter knocked on his door. You asked to see me? Hughes looked up at Carter. She was a good soldier, smart and brave. But like all modern humans, she had spent her career helping people, not killing them. Come in, Beth. Sit down. You're going to want to be sitting for this. Carter sat down, and Hughes handed her a file marked Planetary Siege Doctrine, Final. Solution Protocols. As Carter read, her face went white. Sir, this says to destroy a planet's atmosphere if the enemy won't surrender. That would kill everyone on the surface. Keep reading. Carter turned the page and gasped. Antimatter bombs? Weapons that turn gravity into a weapon? Sir, some of these designs could crack a planet in half. Hughes nodded grimly. That's just the beginning. Look at this. He showed her another file. Relativistic kill vehicles. Basically, you take a chunk of metal and accelerate it to 99% of light speed. When it hits a planet, it releases more energy than 100. Nuclear bombs. And it's almost impossible to stop. But sir, humans would never. We don't fight like this. We're builders, not destroyers. Hughes stood up and walked to his window. Outside, Earth looked peaceful and beautiful. That's what I thought too. But Dr. Phillips sent me her full report yesterday. The ancient tablets. Don't just mention the sleeping war gods. They describe their tactics in detail. He handed Carter another file. This one was Kate Phillips' translation of the ancient writings. The war gods did not fight with honor. Carter read aloud. They struck from darkness and shadow. They poisoned whole worlds to deny them to the enemy. They built weapons that could kill stars themselves. They showed no mercy, took no prisoners, and did not stop until every last devourer was dead. Carter looked up at Hughes. This is describing genocide, sir. Yes, complete and total extinction of the enemy species. And according to these tablets, it worked. The devourers were completely wiped out 3,000 years ago. But then how are they back now? Hughes sank into his chair. That's what scares me, Beth. Either the ancients were wrong about destroying them all, or these are new devourers from somewhere else. Either way, we're facing an enemy that has had 3,000 years to get stronger. Over the next week, more people learned about Protocol Omega. Colonel Ryan Brooks, Hughes' best tactical officer, spent 3 days locked in a room reading the files. When he came out, he looked like he had aged 10 years. Sir, Brooks said quietly, some of these weapons, they're not just military devices. They're designed to cause maximum psychological damage to the enemy. Fear weapons. Things that make the enemy too terrified to fight back. Dr. Kate Phillips arrived at Luna Station, carrying more translations from the ancient ruins. What she found in the newest tablets was even more disturbing. The war gods did not just defeat the devourers, she told Hughes and his staff. They hunted down every single survivor. They tracked them across the galaxy, following them to the edge of known space. When they found the last Devourer ship hiding in a dead system, they didn't just destroy it. They made sure it could never send a signal, never warn others of its kind. How could they be so thorough? Carter asked. Kate looked uncomfortable. According to the tablets, the war gods had a simple rule. If you threatened innocent people, you died, all of you, your entire species. They didn't believe in half measures when it came to protecting others. Hughes realized they needed test subjects for the psychological conditioning that would turn peaceful humans back into warriors. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew volunteered, even though they didn't fully understand what they were agreeing to. The process was horrible to watch. Jake, Lisa, Carlos, and Amy were strapped into chairs while machines worked on their brains. The goal was to strip away 2 centuries of peaceful conditioning and unlock the violent instincts that all humans carried in their genes. Lisa was the first to break. She started screaming about things that had happened on Earth centuries before. She was born. Wars and battles that were part of humanity's genetic memory. When they took her out of the chair, she looked at Hughes with eyes that were no longer entirely human. "Admiral," she said in a voice that was ice cold, "when do we start killing them?" Carlos was next, the gentle engineer who used to fix broken. Machines now spoke casually about building weapons that could sterilize entire planets. Amy, the doctor who had spent her life saving people, started designing biological weapons that could target specific alien species. But Jake was the worst. When the machines finished with him, he stood up calmly and asked, "Where are the Devourers now? I want to see them die." Hughes realized they had created monsters. But they were monsters that might be able to save the galaxy. The real test came when they powered up humanity's hidden weapons for the first time in centuries. Deep beneath the surface of Mercury, in caverns that had been sealed for 200 years, ancient machines began to wake up. The USS Retribution emerged from its hiding place like a metal demon rising from hell. It was not like the peaceful ships humans usually built. It was covered in weapons that had no names in any modern language. Its hull was black as space itself, and looking at it made people feel afraid without knowing why. "Admiral," Brooks reported, "all weapon systems are online. The ship's II is asking for target coordinates. Lock onto that asteroid cluster in Sector 7, Hughes ordered. "Fire one shot, minimum power." The Retribution's main gun charged with a sound like reality tearing apart. When it fired, the beam that emerged was not visible light. It was something else, something that made space itself scream. The asteroid cluster simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized. It was there 1 second and gone the next, as if it had never existed at all. "What kind of weapon is that?" Carter whispered. Brooks checked his readings. "According to the files, it's called a quantum disruptor. It doesn't destroy matter. It convinces the universe that the matter was never there in the first place." Hughes felt a chill run down his spine. This was just one weapon on one ship. According to Protocol Omega, humanity had built hundreds of these vessels before they went to sleep. That night, Hughes stood alone on Luna Station's observation deck, looking out at Earth. The planet still looked peaceful, but he knew that was an illusion. Hidden in bases across the solar system, ancient war machines were waking up. In medical facilities, peaceful humans were being turned back into the killers their ancestors had been. He thought about the Galactic Federation Council and how they had asked humanity to help defend against the Devourers. They thought they were asking the Builders to lend a hand. They had no idea they were waking up something that could destroy them all if it chose to. Hughes made a decision that would haunt him forever. He activated the final phase of Protocol Omega. Across human space, hidden transmitters began broadcasting a signal that would reach every human in the galaxy. The message was simple. The enemy has returned. It is time to remember what we are. And in response, something that had been sleeping for centuries began to wake up. Not just in the humans who volunteered for conditioning, but in all of them. Deep in their genetic code, ancient instincts began to stir. The peaceful builders of the galaxy were about to remember that they were also the most dangerous predators who had ever lived. The change in humanity was swift and terrifying to watch. Within days of Protocol Omega's activation, humans across the galaxy began to transform. Peaceful engineers suddenly understood weapons they had never seen before. Gentle doctors started creating viruses that could kill entire species. Artists began designing machines of war that were beautiful and deadly. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Vengeance. It was nothing like the cargo vessel he used to. Command, this ship was a predator, built for one purpose: killing enemies of humanity. His crew had changed too. Lisa Grant, once a gentle pilot, now flew their ship through space like a hunting animal. Carlos Webb had become a weapons specialist who spoke of destruction like other people talked about the weather. Captain, Lisa reported, we're approaching the Devourer fleet near Proxima Centauri. 12 enemy ships detected. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Devourer ships were massive, each one bigger than a city. They were surrounded by smaller vessels that swarmed like angry insects. Any normal fleet would run from such odds. But the human fleet was not normal anymore. All ships, this is Admiral Hughes, came the voice over the radio. Remember, we are not here to fight these creatures. We are here to erase them from existence, show them why the galaxy used to fear us. Jake smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Lisa, take us in. Carlos, arm all weapons. Amy, start scanning for their weak points. The battle that followed changed how every species in the galaxy thought about humans forever. The human ships did not attack like normal fleets. They did not line up and trade shots with the enemy. Instead, they appeared inside the Devourer formation, using technology that let them jump through space without warning. 1 second the enemy was alone. The next second human warships were among them like wolves in a flock of sheep. Lieutenant Commander Nick Torres led fighter squadrons and craft that seemed to phase in and out of reality. His ships could fly through solid matter, appearing inside enemy vessels to plant bombs directly in their engines. The Devourer's shields meant nothing when human fighters materialized inside them. This is Torres, his voice crackled over the radio. Target down, moving to the next one. These things bled just like everything else. Major Sophia Reed commanded Marine units in powered armor that made each soldier into a walking weapon of mass destruction. When her troops boarded Devourer ships, they did not fight room by room like normal soldiers. They moved through the enemy vessels like a disease, killing everything they found with cold efficiency. Reed to Fleet Command, she reported calmly, while her troops slaughtered their way through an enemy ship. Boarding action complete. No survivors. Ready for next target. The Devourers had never faced anything like this. They were used to enemies who fought with honor, who followed rules, who tried to minimize casualties. Humans followed no such rules. They fought to win, and winning meant the complete destruction of their enemy. Dr. Kate Phillips worked from her laboratory ship, creating biological weapons in real time. She had studied the Devourer technology, captured from previous battles, and designed viruses that attacked their cybernetic parts. Her creations did not just kill. They made sure the enemy could not adapt or evolve to resist future attacks. Phillips, to all ships, she announced, deploying Bioweapon 7. Any Devourer ships caught in the cloud will lose all electronic systems in approximately 90 seconds. The weapon worked perfectly. Devourer ships caught in the viral cloud simply stopped moving as their technology died around them. They became sitting targets for human weapons that tore them apart piece by piece. But the most terrifying thing about the human attack was how coordinated it was. Every ship, every fighter, every marine unit worked together like parts of a single organism. They communicated through quantum channels that the Devourers could not intercept. They shared targeting. Data across light years of space instantly dot when one human ship was damaged. 3 others moved to protect it while it retreated. When enemy reinforcements arrived, human ships were already waiting for them. It was as if the humans could see the future and plan for every possibility. The battle was over in less than 2 hours. 12 Devourer ships had been completely destroyed. Not a single enemy had escaped to warn others of their kind. The human fleet had suffered only minor damage. But the real shock came when Admiral Hughes broadcast his report to the Galactic Federation Council. All Devourer forces in the Proxima Centauri system have been eliminated, he said in a voice that was calm and cold. We are moving to the next target. Do not send rescue ships to investigate. There is nothing left to rescue. The other species in the galaxy watched the battle recordings with growing fear. The Zethkari, who prided themselves on being the greatest warriors in known space, realized they had been children playing with toys. The Veltar, who thought their technology was the most advanced in the galaxy, saw weapons that operated on principles they could not understand. But it was not just the weapons that frightened them. It was how the humans used them. There was no anger in their attacks, no emotion at all. They killed with the same calm efficiency that they once used to build cities. The Devourers were not enemies to be defeated. They were problems to be solved. Jake Morrison stood in the ruins of a Devourer ship, walking through corridors filled with alien corpses. His Marines had been thorough. Nothing living remained aboard the enemy vessel. Captain, Amy Foster reported, I've finished analyzing their technology. These creatures are not the same Devourers from 3,000 years ago. They're evolved. Versions much stronger and smarter than the originals. Jake nodded. It did not matter. Strong or weak, old or new, the result would be the same. Any information on where they came from? Their navigation computers show they originated from outside our galaxy. They've been traveling through space for thousands of years, consuming everything they find. Then we'll follow them home when we're done here. Make sure none of them escape to warn their makers. As the human fleet moved from system to system, hunting down Devourer forces, the other species began to understand the truth. Humans had never been peaceful builders. They had been sleeping predators, and something had finally made them wake up. That the Zethkari military leaders watched human tactics and realized their own strategies were primitive by comparison. The Veltar scientists analyzed captured human weapons and found technology that was centuries ahead of anything they had imagined. The Mordan traders saw human logistics and understood that these people could supply a war effort that spanned the entire galaxy. But most frightening of all was the realization that humanity was holding back. The weapons they were using, the strategies they employed, the casual way they erased entire enemy fleets. This was not humans at their most dangerous. This was humans being careful not to scare their allies too much. Colonel Ryan Brooks studied intelligence reports in his command center aboard the flagship. Admiral, he reported to Hughes, the enemy is changing their tactics. They're starting to run instead of fight. Hughes looked at the tactical display showing Devourer movements across the galaxy. The enemy ships were fleeing toward the galactic rim, trying to escape into the empty space between galaxies. They're learning to fear us, Hughes said with satisfaction. Good. Fear makes them predictable. Begin Operation Final Hunt. I want every escape route blocked. Not a single enemy ship leaves this galaxy alive. The order went out to human fleets across space. The hunt was about to begin in earnest. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Devourers finally understood what their ancestors had faced 3,000 years ago. They were being hunted by something that was very good at killing, and would not stop until every last one of them was dead. A final battle took place at the center of the galaxy, where space itself was twisted by the massive black hole that held all the stars in their orbits. Here, the Devourer Overmind had built its last fortress, a construct the size of a moon. That controlled every surviving member of their species. Admiral Sam Hughes stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the enemy stronghold through the viewing screen. Around him, the largest human fleet ever assembled waited for his orders. Over 300 ships filled the space around the galactic core, each one carrying weapons that could destroy worlds. "Admiral," Colonel Ryan Brooks reported, "all fleet. Units are in position. The enemy fortress is surrounded. They have nowhere to run." Hughes nodded. This was the moment that would decide everything. If they failed here, the Devourers would escape to terrorize the galaxy for another 1,000 years. If they succeeded, an entire species would be wiped from existence forever. "All ships, this is Admiral Hughes," he broadcast to his fleet. 3,000 years ago, our ancestors stood in this same place and made a choice. They chose to protect innocent life, no matter the cost. Today, we make the same choice. Begin the final assault. The battle that followed was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships attacked from every direction at once, their weapons tearing holes in space itself. The Devourer Fortress fought back with weapons that could boil away entire star systems, but it was too late. Humanity had planned this assault for months, and they had thought of everything. Captain Jake Morrison guided his ship, the Vengeance, through a storm of enemy fire that would have destroyed any normal vessel. But his ship was not normal. It was a weapon built by people who understood war better than anyone alive. "Lisa, take us through that gap in their defenses," Jake ordered. "Carlos, prepare the antimatter ram. We're going to punch a hole, right?" Through their hull. Lisa Grant flew their ship like it was part of her own body, dodging weapons that moved at the speed of light. Her hands moved over the controls without conscious thought, following instincts that had been burned into human DNA over millions of years of evolution. The Vengeance slammed into the enemy fortress using controlled antimatter explosions that tore through metal like it was paper. Behind them, Colonel Brooks led an army of Marines in powered armor that made each soldier stronger than a tank. The fighting inside the fortress was brutal and quick. The Devourers threw everything they had at the human invaders, but it made no difference. These were not the peaceful builders who had joined the galaxy 2 centuries ago. These were the apex predators of Earth, and they had remembered how to hunt. Dr. Kate Phillips worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the medical ship Mercy. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, creating the weapon that would end the war forever. It was not just a virus or a poison. It was something far worse. "Phillips to all ships," she announced. "The quantum virus is ready. Once I release it, every devourer in the galaxy will be erased from existence. Not just killed. They will be removed from reality itself, as if they never existed." Admiral Hughes felt a moment of doubt. What they were about to do went beyond simple warfare. They were committing genocide on a scale that had never been attempted before. Every devourer that had ever lived, was living, or could ever live would be wiped from existence. But then he remembered the recordings from Altair Prime, the screams of innocent people being consumed alive, the sight of entire planets being stripped bare to feed an endless hunger. Some enemies could not be reasoned with or reformed. They could only be destroyed completely. "Release the virus," Hughes ordered. Dr. Phillips pressed a single button, and death spread across the galaxy at the speed of thought. The quantum virus did not travel through space. It existed everywhere at once, seeking out the specific genetic and technological markers that made something a devourer. On the fortress, the effect was immediate. Enemy soldiers simply stopped, existing in the middle of battle. Their weapons powered down as the controlling intelligence that operated them was erased from reality. In seconds, the most powerful enemy humanity had ever faced was gone as if it had never been. The silence that followed was deafening. Across the galaxy, human fleets reported the same thing. All devourer activity had ceased. Every enemy ship, every base, every trace of their civilization had vanished. The war was over, but victory came with a terrible price tag as the human fleets returned to their home systems. They found a galaxy that looked at them with new eyes. The other species no longer saw humans as helpful builders or peaceful diplomats. They saw predators who had proven they could erase entire civilizations from existence. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his quarters aboard the Vengeance, staring at his reflection in the mirror. The face looking back at him was his own, but the eyes were those of a killer. He remembered everything he had done during the war. Every enemy ship destroyed, every life taken, every decision made in the cold calculation of total victory. The worst part was that he felt no guilt about any of it. The conditioning that had turned him back into humanity's ancient warrior self had not just unlocked his ability to kill, it had made him enjoy it. That frightened him more than any enemy ever could. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Amy Foster entered, but she was not the gentle doctor he had once known. The war had changed her too. She had created biological weapons that could target specific alien species, and she had done it with the same care she once used to heal people. "Jake, we need to talk," she said, sitting down across from him. "All of us, the whole crew. We need to decide what happens next." Jake knew what she meant. The war was over, but they were not the same people who had started it. They had been turned into weapons, and weapons were dangerous, even to those who wielded them. Admiral Hughes faced the same problem on a much larger scale. In his office on Luna Station, he met with General Beth Carter and Colonel Ryan Brooks to discuss the future of humanity. "We can't go back," Carter said bluntly. "The conditioning process changed us permanently. We remember what we are now, what we've always been underneath the peaceful surface." Brooks nodded. "The question is whether we stay awake or go back to sleep, and whether the galaxy will let us make that choice." Hughes looked out his window at Earth. The planet still looked beautiful and peaceful, but he knew that was an illusion now. Hidden in bases across the solar system, the weapons of war remained ready. And in the minds of every human who had fought in the war, the knowledge of how to use them would never fade. The Galactic Federation Council is meeting tomorrow. Hughes sighed. They want to discuss humanity's role in galactic security going forward. What they really want to know is whether we're going to keep being the galaxy's guardians or become its greatest threat. The council meeting was tense. Representatives from every major species sat around the table, but they all kept their distance from the human delegation. Even the proud Zethkari warriors looked nervous in the presence of Admiral Hughes and his staff. The Veltar representative spoke first. "Admiral Hughes, your species has demonstrated capabilities that far exceed anything we previously believed possible. The question now is what you intend to do with such power." Hughes stood up slowly. He could see the fear in their alien eyes, and he understood it. Humanity had revealed itself to be something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. "We intend to do what we have always done," he said calmly. "Protect innocent life, build things that improve the galaxy, help those who need help. But you also intend to keep your weapons," the Zethkari general stated. It was not a question. "Yes," Hughes replied without hesitation. The Devourers came from outside our galaxy. There may be others out there, threats we cannot imagine. Someone needs to be ready to face them. The Mordan trader shifted uncomfortably. Admiral, your people erased an entire species from existence. How do we know you will not do the same to us if we displease you? Hughes looked around the table at the assembled representatives. He could destroy every one of their civilizations. If he chose to, they all knew it. He knew it. And knowledge hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. Because, he said finally, we chose to be your protectors, not your conquerors. That choice defines us more than our weapons ever could. The meeting ended with an uneasy agreement. Humanity would return to its role as builders and peacekeepers, but they would also maintain their military capabilities in secret. The galaxy needed protectors, even if those protectors were too dangerous to fully trust. Over the following months, the human fleets began to disperse, and massive warships that had fought the Devourers disappeared back into hidden bases. The weapons that could destroy stars were sealed away once more. To outside observers, it looked like humanity was returning to its peaceful ways, but those who looked closely could see the changes. Human engineers now built structures that could be quickly converted to military use. Human diplomats spoke with quiet authority that other species found hard to ignore. Human traders moved through space with confidence that suggested they feared nothing the galaxy could throw at them. Captain Jake Morrison returned to running supply missions, but his ship was no longer the peaceful cargo vessel it had once been. The New Horizon 2 carried medical supplies and construction materials, but it